I think it would be kind of cool to be abducted by aliens, right? I mean, who in here would not want to? You all want to meet the aliens, right? If they're out there, of course. We're not anti-alien. We're just anti your account of the alien. That's all. Now, what pisses me off, inept aliens, okay? Here, you ready? So, here are aliens from another planet, another galaxy. They traverse interstellar space in their spacecraft. Trillions of miles. And they get to Earth and they crash. And I'm thinking, I don't want to meet these aliens. They can't land on Earth. Bring me somebody who knows how to navigate, okay? And then I'll have a conversation with those aliens. Until then, stay out of my face, okay? I don't like stupid aliens. Next. Oh, and you remember Close Encounters of the Third Kind? You know that movie, right? What was weird was, here's the mothership. We all saw the movie. If you haven't, go ahead. Who's the 15-year-old here? Have you seen that movie yet? Close Encounters of the Third Kind? Put it on Netflix it, okay? All right. So the mothership comes. And they all knew the mothership was coming. They all knew it was a flying saucer. They all knew it came from another planet through the vacuum of space. And so what do? To the left of that monument, they set up runway lights. And I'm thinking, if you could travel through the vacuum of space, you don't need runway lights. Runway lights are like if you're using air for lift. Aliens would not need air for lift. So the people were not thinking this through. Those were inept producers. Okay. Conspiracy theory. Again, this is brain droppings. Conspiracy theory. Here's what you do. A conspiracy theorist is a person who tacitly admits that they have insufficient data to prove their point. Just tell this to their face, okay? Because the conspiracy is the battle cry of the person with insufficient data. Until they produce sufficient data, they gotta claim this. And so just say, come back when you have the data. Then we'll have this conversation. But they're gonna claim conspiracy. But just tell them they're missing data. Just tell them that, and then walk away. That conversation should be 5 minutes long. As they say, if an argument lasts more than 5 minutes, both sides are wrong, all right? Keep that one in mind. Astrology. This is what you do. Get a classroom of people, a group of people who are believers. And don't do what they want. This is what you do. Go to the horoscope that day. Pluck one at random, read it to that audience and say, whose horoscope did I just read? 2/3 of the hands will go up, okay? Which we know is not how that's supposed to work. It should really be 1/12 if it had any sense at all. That's the simplest test that I know to demonstrate to someone that it's just bunk, other than the rational arguments that you might spend time offering, like where the sun was when you were born doesn't match where it was 2,000 years ago when this got laid out. And the fact that there are 14 constellations in the zodiac, not 12. One of them is Ophiuchus. Any Ophiuchans here? Okay? Some people know they're Ophiuchans. The sun, after passing through Scorpio, spends more time in Ophiuchus than it did in Scorpius. So if you thought you were Scorpion, you're probably Ophiuchian, and all Ophiuchans and Scorpions are currently Librans. That's how that plays out. So, birth rates and full moons, one of my favorites. There are a couple of municipalities where the birth rates jump a little during the full moon, and everyone says, oh, it's the gravity of the full moon yanking the baby from the womb, you know? And I'm thinking, maybe there's another explanation. So, if you look at the gestation period of the human female, it's basically about 295 days. Not from the date of missed period, but from when you actually got pregnant. That's the number that matters here, okay? 295 days. How long is the average cycle between consecutive full moons? 29.5 days. So, take 29.5 days, multiply by 10, you get 295 days. So if your child was born under a full moon, that just simply meant you got knocked up under a full moon. That's what that meant, okay? And no one argues the romantic effects of a moonlit night. Okay? What about behavior? I told you this was brain droppings. I warned you in advance. Behavior and full moons. This one is classic. People say, oh, they acted crazy. The moon pulls the tides. The tides are made of water. The human body is mostly water. The moon must affect the human body. Until you actually do the math. And when you do the math, you can ask the question, well, what is the tidal force of the moon on your cranium? How about that calculation? You could do that calculation. The tidal force of the moon on your cranium. Because if that were severe, it could be messing with you, right? All right, so you do the calculation. It turns out, if you're one of these people who sleep with like a lot of pillows, and one of the pillows is kind of leaning on your head overnight, the pressure from that pillow on your head is 1 trillion times greater than the tidal force of the moon across your cranium. But nobody talks about the effects of down pillows on your behavior the next day. Why not? I love the talk we just had on medicine. I have a comment about that. Something I just find astonishing, remarkable. I'm so impressed by this. Are you ready? Here's what happens. Someone is diagnosed. I'm making up a very common example for the purposes of this explanation. Somebody's diagnosed with terminal cancer. The doctor says, you got 6 months to live. You say, you mind if I get a second opinion? Of course, go ahead. Go to a second doctor. You got 5 months to live. Go to a third doctor. 7 months to live. So basically, you're going to be dead in 6 months, plus or minus. Okay? What happens? You're alive a year later. Okay? You're alive 2 years later. 3 years later, the cancer's in remission. 5 years later, it's gone from your body. You happen to have been a religious person, and over that time you were praying. People were praying for you. Here's what's astonishing, is that if you are that person, you are more likely to believe that God cured you, this invisible force, creator of the universe, cured you, than that you had 3 idiot doctors diagnose you. I am astonished by this fact. The American Medical Association, is that what they call it, AMA? Has got to be the most powerful organization in the world because no one questions those diagnoses. They'll credit whatever else was going on because they were sure they were going to die. And I can tell you this, I taught physics to pre-med students who became doctors. Not all of them are smart, I assure you. Not only that, they're all trained in the same system. So 3 separate doctors that all went through the same system of medical schools, that's not actually 3 different opinions. It's the same opinion, just nuanced by what the person had for breakfast that morning. It's not 3 different opinions. Now, just to confirm this, there's a colleague of mine in the front row. Have you taught physics to pre-medical students? You have not, so I don't have a second opinion on what this is. So I'm just impressed that it's impossible for people to think that they just had idiot doctors diagnose them, or that it was a diagnostic failure. I'm sorry, say again? Okay, we have a Physics 101 professor here who said he's failed more students who are pre-med than those who are pre-law. Yeah, it's astonishing. It's astonishing who ends up being our doctors. I got to keep going. I have way more to come, okay? Swami levitation. We've seen this, okay? Now, it turns out, now, don't criticize it. It turns out there is no law of physics that prevents this, okay? This is physically possible. And so you do the calculation of how to make that possible. And the only way you can make that happen is by invoking Newton's second law of motion. And by doing that, you have to consume mass quantities of beans. By my count, about 1,000 cans. Then your anal sphincter has to be really tight to hold in the methane effluences that are ready to burst forth. At which point, you let it go, and then you levitate. For as long as you have gas to provide it. That's, by the way, how the space shuttle, not with beans, but it's gas coming out one direction, the recoil goes in the other direction. Now, I found this picture on the internet. This is like combines everything I just said. It's a levitated can of beans. I thought that was kind of cool. The moon hoax. We got people out there who say we never went to the moon. First of all, we should be proud that we live in a culture that has technologies so advanced that some members of that same culture are in denial of it. That's a statement of how advanced we are. So we should be a little more sensitive to their disbelief. Because it's astonishing. It's just, we do astonishing things. And some people are so astonishing, they just can't believe it. So here's what you do. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the Saturn V rocket, launching once again, sending gas out one side and the recoil up the other. Just to remind you how this works, I'm sorry, I can't point to two at one moment at the same time, but all of this is fuel. And the astronauts are right there, okay? In that little bitty capsule right there. That's where the astronauts are. They're sitting on a controlled bomb. All right, so all you have to do is calculate how much fuel is there, invoking the rocket equation. Because when you invoke the rocket equation, you learn that most of the fuel you're burning now is just to launch to a higher point the fuel you have yet to burn. This is how that works. So for every increment of distance you have to go, you've got to have that much bigger spaceship to enable it, to carry the fuel you have yet to burn. And so you do this calculation and you show that this is enough fuel to carry these three astronauts and their rover out of low Earth orbit to the moon and back. All the fuel is there. Where else do you think this was going? Okay, to like the A&P grocery store? What? Where is this? What do you think this thing is doing? So the moon hoaxers just challenge them to learn the rocket equation and apply the math, to do the math. And then they go away and they never come back. By the way, to show you how big this is, it's huge. Okay, these are people right here standing, approaching one of the rocket nozzles of the 5 at the base of the Saturn V rocket. Okay, this thing is huge. All fuel. All fuel. More. The Mars virus. This one, most of you probably don't know about. Phil and I know all about it. Okay? It started innocently enough. 5 years ago, 2003. Mars, as you may know, is in an elliptical orbit, sometimes closer to the sun, sometimes farther. So are we in an elliptical orbit, sometimes farther, sometimes closer. If you look at the combinations of our orbits, what situation do you need for Earth to be closest to Mars? What you want is Earth farthest from the sun and Mars closest to the sun. That pinches that distance at the most you can. And then you're really close. Okay, in 2003, we were closer to Mars than we had been in 60,000 years. Well, all people paid attention to was the word close and the number 60,000 in years. And it just took off. And people said, oh, on that particular night in August, Mars will be the size of the full moon, all right? And so this went on. It even captured page one story, okay? Close up. And in these pages, it talks about you might need sunglasses at night because Mars will be so large and bright. Now, I'll tell you how that worked. You ready? Here's how it goes. Here's how it goes. Where are we now? We're in like Vegas? Which way is west? Anybody know which way west is? That way, thank you. So let me come over here. Now, why did I believe you, sir? Because 20 other hands pointed the same way. It's not that I have that much confidence in you per se, okay? I did a quick average, and it's this way. All right, so here we go. I'm in Vegas. So, yes, we were closer than we ever been in 60,000 years. By how much? Here's how it goes. You ready? I'm standing here, and suppose I did this. You ready? I have never before been this close to Japan. Okay, so it was a little closer than it is any other time Earth and Mars swing around in their orbits. And here's what happens. That started on the internet. Every August, the same news story circulates. They forgot that it only happened in that year, and they forgot that it was a nothing event anyway. So you're going to see it again. I call it the Mars virus, because people want to send it around.